My second question for you, Rob. JJ, you're off the hook. You guys have stuff that you haven't had access to this summer in terms of cap space, in terms of multiple draft picks that you can maneuver with. How do you feel about the level of optionality? I know it's one of your favorite words that you guys have this summer to get better. And do you see pathways potentially that if you do return Austin and LeBron, that you guys can still mold the roster in sort of the ways that best fit Luka?
Yeah, I think that is a really good, and the right word to use is optionality in this sort of double apron CBA. It's almost an effective hard cap. I think having the optionality to roster plan and roster build, there's several ways to do it. There's in the draft. There's through trades where some teams are going to be trying to get off good players in this harsh system. And then there's through free agency. And we do, to your point, have the optionality to look at all those different avenues to get better. And the archetype of the roster that we want is going to be retrofitted around Luka and the things he needs. And clearly he's that leader and player for the future that we want to build the right way.
Thanks for tuning in to the Urban Scope podcast. And as you can hear from the audio clip, Rob Pelinka, who's the general manager and the president of basketball operations for the Los Angeles Lakers, is talking about the offseason and the moves they plan to make. But interestingly enough, he doesn't mention LeBron. Everything is centered around, we're going to build around Luka. We're going to do this for Luka. We're going to try to make a team like pretty much like he had in Dallas with a bunch of rim runners and a bunch of, put a couple shooters around him for the most part. So I found that pretty interesting, but especially despite, I guess he made these comments despite the injury history and the unreliability of Luka over these last couple of years. And that's why most people believe that Dallas moved on from Luka. So for them to still believe in him, but I guess he is the future because LeBron, I guess he can't play forever. So eventually they have to have a piece to move on. And it's pretty smart that they got Luka early so they can figure out and probably try to work on his conditioning and his training and his off-season habits to get him in a better shape because they have to have that piece going forward, at least for everyone to keep their jobs, for ownership to keep their jobs no matter what. But people like Rob Pelinka and people like JJ Redick need to keep their jobs. So Luka is an essential piece of that, especially being able to make the playoffs. But eventually they will have to win a championship because a team like LA, the fans don't stay for anything less than championship. So, but it seems like unlike Dallas, they're heavily invested in Luka, and then for the first time in LeBron's career, he seems to be somewhat disposable because the Lakers are always about the future, but I think they're starting to see the decline in LeBron, despite he's still performing at a very high level for the average player. But but up to LeBron's standards, there are a lot of slippage. He's not as energetic as he once was. He still has the bounce in his step, but that first step that he has isn't the same. So he's starting, Father Time is starting to kick in. So they're starting to see the light at the end of the tunnel for him. The team wasn't constructed well. I don't think Rob Pelinka does a good job of constructing these teams. Actually, I think they should probably move on or just make him president of basketball operations, but as his general manager, he hasn't done the best job of putting pieces around because you have Luka and LeBron, which if Luka wasn't out there, probably go a lot further. But still, you should have the requisite pieces around LeBron to actually get it done because I think LeBron is still capable of being, the best player on the championship team, or at least the second best player on a championship team. But if you can put enough pieces around him, he can be the best player because he's still one of the best passers in basketball, still one of the greatest minds in basketball. But this has led people to ask the question, where does LeBron go from here? Because in his career, we know he started out in Cleveland and he went to Miami, then he went back to Cleveland and he went out to LA. And he's just wagging to LA since 2018. So almost, close to 9 years now he's been in LA. It'll be coming up on 10 years in a couple of years. So he's pretty much been stationary because they say he loved to live out in LA. I believe he has 2 houses in LA. His family's out there, so everything's been good for him. All his kids are finished schooling with the exception of his daughter. So would he wanna reroute or up and leave and go to another place, and they have to change schools and all these different things? That's yet to be seen. Uh, but it doesn't look like there's a bright future in LA. The rumblings behind the scenes are that they're not on the same page as far as LeBron and management. So where could he go from here? Um, I think he has a few options, but I think the options are very limited because when they talk about the GOAT discussion, they talk about how he left all these different teams to go win championships and the ring chase, which I know he hears the conversations, but I don't think he really cares about it because I think he's worried about his own family, his own situation, which is the best situation for him. But I think a couple places that he couldn't go, well, he could go, but things would be a lot different. So, of course, one of the places is Miami. Now, many people feel that that bridge has been burned in Miami, at least from LeBron's side, because of the relationship that LeBron had with Pat Riley and the ownership group because they wasn't willing towards the end of his tenure there in Miami. They were it was alleged that they were not as willing to acquiesce to his team and the needs that he needed. We know with LeBron, you ha- there has to be some kind of equity that you have to give up or at least compromise on. You have to let him pretty much kind of run the organization. So it seems like Pat Riley wasn't up for that anymore, or at some points just wasn't willing to compromise. So most people think that bridge is burned in Miami. And plus Miami has a team that needs a lot of different pieces and it's not a lot for them to do. Now, if they want to sell tickets, they'll bring LeBron back because he most people believe his best years were in Miami in those 4 years that he was there. So if they want to sell tickets, that's something they can do. But as far as winning, they're not going to win in Miami. And I think LeBron wants to go somewhere to win. And I believe Miami is not that because they have Bam and sprinkles of players, but they don't have anything promising. They don't have any championship roster. They don't have any hopefuls. They don't really have much there. So I don't think Miami is an option. Cleveland. So Cleveland is interesting because, of course, that's the team that's drafted him. That's his home team, so to speak, even though he's from Akron, but it's pretty close to Cleveland, I believe. I think he could go to Cleveland, but the only thing is they have a championship made team now. They're in the playoffs against Detroit. If they win this series, they'll be in the NBA Finals. And if they win the NBA Finals, why would you bring LeBron in? Because LeBron you would have to give up some pieces. Some people would have to leave, and you would lose that championship team. If you can win a championship without LeBron, I think uh, Dan Gilbert, who is a known adversary or arch emesis of LeBron from the past, because the reason why LeBron left the first time, but it ended up coming back and winning the championship. Dan Gilbert saying, "Hey, if I can win a championship without LeBron, I proved my point. I can make a championship team without LeBron. Why would I bring LeBron back in?" Now, unless Dan Gilbert's, he gets in his mogul mind and says, "Well, if I have LeBron for the next 2 or 3 years on contract, I'll have the retirement tour. I'll get the sales. I'll get the revenue. I'll get the TV time. I'll get the viewership. I can get money but beyond belief." But I think if LeBron comes back, he would have to give up too much. Dan Gilbert would have to give up too much equity. He would have to give up too many of his ownership status. And we know these owners are not willing to do that unless you're another money man or you're somebody that they want something from, which LeBron doesn't have much he wants from him other than the revenue and the sales. But from a basketball standpoint, it doesn't make sense to break up your young core or younger core for an aging superstar that you will only have for a couple of years, but you have to lose some of your young core for. So it doesn't make a lot of sense in basketball terms unless you're trying to win now. But I don't think LeBron makes the team better than what Donovan Mitchell and James Harden and Evan Mobley are doing right now. So I don't think that would help. So, but I do think Cleveland is a better fit than Miami. Now, for the contenders, I think the only contenders are the Lakers, which he can return to the Lakers and pretty much be second fiddle to Luca, or maybe even third fiddle, depending on who they draft this year and how good that player will be, or if they pick up any off-season acquisitions. So he'll be second or third fiddle and just have to live with that and just ride his career out there in LA because I don't think they'll win anything because I don't think Luca will be healthy enough for the foreseeable future. So I don't think they will win anything in LA. So that's his first probably option. Or the second option is the Warriors. You have an aging Steph Curry, who seems to be pretty reliable for the most part. You have a Draymond Green who can be a bit of a sideshow and is pretty unstable at a lot of times, but he's a very strong player as far as what he means to the Golden State Warriors. And then also you have Jimmy Butler, who's coming off an injury. That'll be pretty solid. So I think that's a good place for LeBron to go because they don't have a young nucleus there. You won't really be disrupting much. It'll just be another piece that they can put together. And if they stay healthy, they can be pretty formidable. But that'll be a detriment, I think, to his legacy because a lot of people say you join Golden State like Kevin Durant. But of course, it's not the same situation because these guys are not in their prime anymore. They're at the end of their careers. It's more like a Houston Rockets when Charles Barkley joined, Hakeem and all those guys, and they tried to make a super team, but they were just out of their primes at the time. So that's what that pretty much will be. And I don't think they will win a championship, but I think they could possibly make the playoffs and, scare a team or two, but that's about it. And then lastly, of course, the Sacramento Kings is just pretty much a dumpster fire at this point. They're just putting in any talent that they can. They traded all the way to key pieces and they're in rebuild mode. They can use LeBron to sell some tickets, get some revenue. LeBron can accumulate a bunch of stats. He actually started his first game against Sacramento. I want to say it was in Sacramento. So it'll be uh, you know, returning to fruition, so to speak. But if he wants to accumulate a bunch of stats and just make money for an organization and just prove that he can win with a lesser team, he can go to Sacramento and do that. And that's the only three teams that I think that are formidable for him really are the Lakers, Sacramento, and then of course the Warriors. Now the other teams in the league, I believe they have too many young pieces and too many young nucleuses that you don't want to interrupt just for a player to have them for a year or two. And you have to rebuild all again, and that wouldn't make sense for a GM or for a franchise. So I don't think LeBron has that many options. Uh, and you have to be willing to let go of some control and let his family pretty much take over the team because probably have to bring in Bronny with LeBron. You have to bring in Bryce as well once he gets to the league. And I don't know if LeBron really has that leverage anymore because the face of the league, it seems to be Wemby now, and it seems to be Ant-Man, and it seems to be um, players like Jokic and Luca. So it's not really a face of the league anymore. It's faces of the league. They have to put these people together to make one because we don't really have a superstar that's really reliable like that right now. So yeah, so that's where it is for right now. But we'll keep an eye on it. Until next time, I'll see you next time.